Charlie has a message for us all, and it kind of puts our feet back on the ground when we walk out of here to realize the responsibility that we have not only to our patients and family, but to our community and friends. And that without the truth and understanding of what we're doing to our patients physically, emotionally, and environmentally to our communities, 2 years ago I did a study out of my office, and before I put mercury separators in, I found out that my office was only putting out 13,368% above legal limits of mercury into the wastewater, and that was measured by the city of Mesa, by them coming out at my request to check it. Once we placed the mercury separator into the system, we only reduced the output of mercury, and this little birdie, I'm sorry, came by. We only reduced the amount of mercury by 99.6%, 40% below the illegal limit of what was allowed to go into the water. And most amazingly, I got a letter from the city of Mesa informing me that even though I got these numbers, they aren't really significant at all, and that I shouldn't say anything about it. That they wouldn't stand by it, the water department. And when I called the gentleman who was involved with it, he told me, we are not going to take on organized dentistry. They're just too powerful. And that's the introduction I want to give to Charlie Brown, because apparently he wasn't listening to anybody when they said they were just too powerful. Charlie Brown has been ahead of the consumer advocates groups, and he'll name all of them, and every one of them he can give you the history. But I've worked with Charlie. I have donated $1 or $2 to his cause, and I hope that you will, after hearing him, consider donating a few piskels or pennies a month. It doesn't take a lot out of your pocket, but we have seen a lot of changes, and they've been a direct result of his efforts. May I introduce to you Mr. Charlie Brown.
Thank you, Mike. And Bill Glaros has asked, does this be in Espanol? And we're going to just do simulcast, where Mike will translate in Hebrew and Andy Landerman in Spanish. We have Dr. Lee in Korean, and I don't know what you know, Latin, whatever you got from your school. Okay, good. It's Greek. Okay, good. Well, we'll try to add those into it. Our group is Consumers for Dental Choice. We have had coalitions of that, as Mike has mentioned, of different other groups. That is our group, Consumers for Dental Choice, and our website is toxicteeth.org. And many of you are familiar with that because all around this room are people who have contributed, as Mike has done so heavily, for just year after year to make this work. And that this work is our agenda, which is abolishing mercury in dentistry. 2006, this is why I wanted to come out here and talk to you. 2006 was the watershed year. We went over the top last year, and we're down the home stretch now to get rid of mercury. There were 4 major events that all came together in 2006 that signals, as Diane Watson said, a congresswoman from Los Angeles says, is the beginning of the end of mercury fillings. Last March, in result to a petition that we filed, and again, we are in business because of so many of you all, a petition that we filed in March, the FDA responded in March, a petition we'd filed the year before, saying they would hold a meeting of 2 scientific panels on the neurotoxicity of mercury. This is development number 1, is the developments on that meeting. During the summer, FDA finally relented and put a mercury-free dentist on the dentist panel. That's Dr. Mike Fleming of Durham, North Carolina. Many of you know Mike or know of Mike. That panel met in September 6th and 7th. We had dentists there from all over the country. I don't know, who was there from here? I know Hal Huggins. Okay, good. Andy Brockman was here, and Vinny DiLorenzo, and I'm not sure who else came and spoke eloquently. Our president came, Sandy Duffy. The board voted, the panels rejected the FDA position decisively, 13-7. Basically, inside FDA now, you have turmoil. You have the scientific panel saying that the staff is all wet, concluding that it's safe. So no longer is FDA speaking with one voice. That cheerleader for amalgam approach is what we call in court pleadings. They now are divided, where the panels have said, you have not shown us that it's safe, and we think for pregnant women and children, we think for hypersensitive people, there's got to be some major changes in labeling and maybe even contraindications. So that was event number one. So FDA knows the staff is no longer hidden inside the bureaucracy. Development number two was in April. That started in March. In April, we sued FDA. The case is Moms Against Mercury versus FDA. And we have 9 plaintiffs. We call it petitioners, kind of a dream team if you're a baseball fan. We have several nonprofit groups, including Oregonians for Life, a right-to-life group that is concerned not only on ending abortion, but in keeping the fetus safe from toxins. We have Connecticut Coalition for Environmental Justice, a minority-run organization headed by a black physician in Connecticut, whose focus is the lower-income folks and the toxins that they're getting so much more than others. And we have as our lead plaintiff Moms Against Mercury, which is women who from North Carolina who say, no, my child is not autistic. That's not correct. My child is mercury damaged. Of course, that is what is going on, as everyone in this room knows. We have a number of individuals, one of them being Dr. Andy Landerman is one of the plaintiffs. We have 2 individuals. We have Senator Karen Johnson's one of the plaintiffs, somebody that known to every dentist in this valley as a hero. She's a plaintiff, and so is a member of the California Dental Board, Kevin Biggers. So a very active public member on the dental board. So development number 2 is the lawsuit, and I've got real good news on that. Next month, March 27th, is oral argument. Oral argument before the second most important court in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. And we will be arguing that FDA has illegally approved mercury fillings and cannot operate in the regulations that it is using now. We, within 11 months, were able, by a kind of a legal shortcut, and we'll have to see if the court approves it when we get before them, but so far we've won all the motions that they used to dismiss it, and we are now. So the FDA is under heat from inside, and they're under heat where the federal judges are certain to ask on March 27th to the Justice Department lawyer, how come FDA won't classify mercury fillings? That question is bound to come, and it'll be interesting. And I think they're saying in their court pleadings they're getting to it. Now, this has been 31 years of getting to it. So we've claimed they've chosen not to do anything. Development number 3, to the delight of Andy Landerman, to the just chagrin of Mike Margolis, the control of Congress switched hands in November. And see, some are cheering. See, there's cheering. And now it's time for those that want to hiss to the other side. See, so anyway, see, I knew that Lee and some of those. See, I knew that. That's why I love this group. It's all kinds of people. We're just divided on politics and united on our cause. The good news on yes, okay, bipartisan, absolutely, and that's right. So, but what that means, though, politically, is that when the president is one party and the Congress is the other, and you saw that in the 90s with Clinton, and you're going to see it now, there's much more oversight of agencies, much more looking over the shoulder of what agencies do. The word in Washington is oversight. Basically, are they doing their job? And we've got members of Congress like Diane Watson of California, Jim Moran of Virginia, the kind of people in the Democratic Party that were doing, and there are only a few, we're doing what only a few Republicans were doing, like Dan Burton, who was just so fabulous. And we've got fabulous people from both sides, and there are only a few of them in each party. But fortunately, they are now saying we're going to oversee FDA. So that's a third development, pressure on FDA from the Hill, from Capitol Hill, that is definitely having an effect. And it's unlike in Canada, it's a divided government. You can't have that constitutionally in Canada. I don't think it works in Parliament, but it works in a three-branch system. And the fourth development was in Chicago. Major shakeup at the fortress of the Mercury Fortress there, the American Dental Association. The lead lawyer for the ADA, decade after decade, he was not only lead lawyer, he was the assistant executive director. He's the one that always spearheaded the legal assaults. He's the one who is the one who wrote the opinions to say it's unethical to remove amalgam and it's ethical to keep your mouth shut, and all these terrible ways that he operated. On November the 8th, he's gone. gone. No explanation, he's gone. I mean, they fired him or he quit, but it was this issue. He and the executive director of the ADA had it out, and he disappeared. And I mean disappeared. It was the way people disappeared under Stalin. He's just gone. There's no explanation. There's no gold watch. There's nothing. He's gone. And so the day after that, they responded to me. Yeah, Mike Margolis. No, that idea is circulating, the issue of whether the insurance company withdrew coverage. The insurance company filed suit asking the court in Chicago to decide whether they could withdraw coverage. And I talked to that lawyer encouraging it. And see, we don't go with anybody. So the trial lawyers want insurance coverage. We don't want it, and there's no interest group. We work with the trial lawyers when the good ones, we file cases, but believe me, there's no interest group we stay with when we shouldn't. And we went to the insurance side and said, this is great, pull it. And he said, the lawyer said, I don't think we can win the case, but we're going to do a declaratory judgment. I don't know if there's been a ruling, Mike. Do you know if there's been a ruling on it? He was pretty certain he was going to lose, but he said we have to do it because it's so much money at stake. We have to protect our interests. So, but at least the pressure is there. But I'll tell you, related to that is the ADA is paying huge legal bills, and I know that because they told that to Fleming. They actually went down and met with Fleming, and one of the things the guy said is these legal bills are mounting up. So it is true that they're doing it, and they are working on this in-house. Well, I had proposed to the ADA in April. I said, you all ought to get out of mercury fillings. We gave them an exit strategy. And the exit strategy was, as environmental stewards, the issue Mike was talking about, as environmental stewards, we should leave. And I said, no questions asked. We won't chase you on the health issues. Just get out. Announce a day, and it's over. And that lawyer that I was dealing with, said, well, I'll get back to you, and he didn't. But I predicted that the hearing at the FDA would be the watershed event. And so I didn't hear from him, so I waited till that hearing and the decisive vote against the staff, and I wrote him again. And I said, Peter, I told you, and now the ball is rolling, and the clock is moving against you guys, because if you wait much longer, nobody will believe you when you say we're getting out for environmental reasons, because the health issues will be at the top of the agenda. And he dillied and dallied, and then, they either fired him or he quit. But he was gone, and the day after he was gone, I get a letter, he's gone, no explanation. Would you like to come to Chicago and meet with us? So I did. December 14th, I met with their two lawyers, and we discussed our plan for an end to amalgam. They are, we've got a little sailboat, and they're a huge battleship. It's kind of hard to turn one around. And they pointed that out, that this is a big, difficult thing. It can't be done real fast, and there's huge amount of decision makers, and so the issue's in play at the ADA. There is dissent within. There's no question, or they wouldn't have had the firing of the lawyer. So, not that lawyer. I'm talking about an ordinary. This is like the guy that has been their main guy. So we're going to confer again in March. We were going to have February. They don't think they're ready. They may do nothing. It's okay. I mean, we're moving forward. Fine, but if they want to get out, it'll happen a lot faster. So, my goal is not, there's going to be a lot of people that say, why didn't we get this if they get out, and why didn't we get that? There's all these things we can look back with, and I'll tell you a story. I worked for years with one of the great grassroots groups in American history, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And all these advocates with the Mothers Against Drunk Driving were people who had lost a family member to death or terrible injury, often death, and yet they worked in the cause, and they didn't say at the start, let's shut down Budweiser. They could have made that their cause, but, they'd still be working today on shutting down Budweiser. They said, let's stop drunk driving, and they reduced it dramatically. If you look at the charts, the number of people who died from drunk driving starting in 1980 when they were founded down through the late 90s was dramatic. Still existed, still a problem, but you all, those who are as old as I am, remember Johnny Carson jokes. It was a joke to talk about drunk driving. Believe me, it ended being a joke that moment. And so it was dramatic. Well, that's what I'm working on. Our goal is to end the use, no more amalgam in any child's mouth. No more mercury in children, pregnant women, any men, anybody. And if that takes not righting all the past wrongs, it's not going to right all the past wrongs, but it is going to, that's to us the best and surest path to go with, and I thought I'd say that. Now, again, we're using every option we can, whether it's lawsuits, whatever, and if it brings down the whole ADA, fine. That's fine. That's good. So at this point, the ball's in their court, because we painted the picture to them in very specific language. And I might say that lawyer parted ways the day after I wrote the very specific letter. Here's what's going to happen. November 7th, November 8th, he said, I'm out. I'm giving your material over to the executive director. So that's in play, but if it isn't, don't get your hopes up. The point is, FDA is under intense pressure, the courts, the Congress, and within, everywhere, to do something. So that's why 2006 was the watershed year. We're over the top, but we have huge battles to win. We want to win that court case next month. We want to get congressional oversight. We want FDA to act. Those are three places that the crunch is coming in, and somewhere the crunch is going to come in. It's just going to come in, and I can't tell you which of those ways. Okay, part two, or as Paul Harvey would say, I think a word from our sponsors here. The sponsors are you. And the men and women who have really been with us for so long, and they're all over this room, and they're from all parts of the country, Oregon and Washington, Dr. Meyer, Dr. Stefan, Dr. DeFelice in the Northwest, and Drs. Landerman, Pana, Heltzel in California and Nevada, and Dr. Kenna in New Mexico, Dr. Swidler in Tucson, in the Valley here, Dr. Margolis, Dr. Lee, Dr. Noel, Dr. Meyer, two Dr. Meyers, Ann and Nick, different parts of the country. In the Midwest, Drs. King and Underdale and Severson, and we're here. And in the East, Dr. Briner, who's also a member of our board, Dr. Mimily, Dr. Zinas. You all have, in Texas, Dr. Glaros, Dr. Sefcik. You all have really just made things very important for us. Brockman, DiLorenzo, until they went into consulting, were longtime supporters. And it is not just, kind of like it's nice to get your help. It's nice to survive because of you. Now, there was a period when we started, it was only the dentists. Then when we started, and I was a practicing lawyer, and I did this part-time. Then we got a major grant giver that got involved around 2001, I think, that allowed us to leave and set up our own offices in 2002. And I could do this on virtually a full-time basis. And that was H.B. Wallace, a wonderful man. He funded research for Professor Haley. Is Boyd still here? And is Boyd here still? Anyway, okay. And just our Einstein of our movement, if you will. And Einstein, by the way, said that it's always amazing when curiosity survives a formal education. And no, I think of you folks, whether you're hygienists, naturopaths, pharmacists, dentists, physicians. I think of you folks because you guys decided that you were going to that curiosity was going to survive your formal education. A woman who worked for us, Amanda Ganong, I asked her what it was like growing up in the household of the late David Ganong. And she said, and he had 5 kids. It wasn't like he didn't have something he could have done it. He said, what that he obviously had busy parenting skills needs too. But I said, what was it like growing up? And she said, you know what my dad was doing every night? Reading. And I told that to Carol Arana, and she said, you know what Ed was doing all the time? The late Ed Arana, reading. And there's no way you meant it. When Terry Lee told me when he joined this group, and one of the very early ones, and Gary Varigan, who was here at the beginning of this group besides Terry and Gary? Anybody else? And Bob Stefan? Okay. Lon? Okay. And you are? Okay, well, and you're? Oh, sure you are, Ron. Thank you. And one of our supporters. Did I name you in Minnesota? Wisconsin, when I went through the list? Thank you. I was trying to do it up here. Good. Underdale? Okay, good. Did I not list you when I said the Midwest? Underdale, King, and Severson? Good. Anyway, but Terry, I think you told me this. That meeting, you saw all these people that had come to the conclusion you had, and it was so refreshing because you were alone in the valley. You had like everybody around you saying, no, it can't be, because all the other dentists are saying this. And you found this liberating opportunity, and because you decided to keep going. When you got here, okay, good. Well, that was 1951 or something, yeah. Okay. So it really has been. We have our Arizona director here, our volunteer director, Carolyn Dornwin, that did so much work at the legislature. Where is she? Stand up, Carolyn. Stand up, Carolyn. Stand up. I can see you. Come on. And next to her, my wife, Ann Swanson, has put up with this whole thing for 10 years. Stand up, Ann. Okay. Good. Okay. Well, we are moving this thing on to, is Patrick Sullivan here, by the way, speaking of people to recognize, because he's on our board, and Mark Brinder's on our board. I'm not sure if young Patrick's here. Okay. Yes, okay. Okay, great. Or Ben? Colleen? Okay. Well, we are we are moving. Did I mention Heltzel too? He's here in my list of supporters. I hope I did. I'm just looking at my list here. Good. I'm glad I got all these people. In the states, we're moving forward too. Now, our main focus is federal. Now, where it should be, we had to have this work in the states to make it happen. But at the state level, we are working on continue to get fact sheets. As I emailed those of you on my email list, if you're not on my email list and you didn't give me your email, I'd love for you to be on it. I'd be happy. I do send out things not on like a regular calendar, but on an event development basis. But it's about every month, and it tells you developments, and I'll give you my email address in a moment. And if you want to write me and say, here's my address, put me on the list, I'll be and anybody, you don't have to be a dentist or anybody, I'll put you on the list. But I'm Charlie at Toxic Teeth, Charlie IE at toxicteeth.org. Our website is toxicteeth.org. So just you can write me, and I'm very happy to keep going. Mike, I saw you, My Dentist 4 now. You keep adding numbers. This is a more exclusive club. So anyway, to get up there. Oh, for you. Oh, I thought it was 4. Okay. They all. But we do have 4 fact sheets. Now 3 are in New England, one's California. And without the Landerman case, we wouldn't have had a California fact sheet. We have one. But you can give that out in your state. Nobody says you can't give it out. I mean, the best one is probably Maine. Connecticut has Maine's, but Connecticut changed their system so they could hide their fact sheet, and we called them and they put it back on their system. But you can, if you pick that up and it was in emails from me, just give it out if you want. Why not give it out? Here's what Maine has. Here's what California does. All these states are giving it out to say give it out in the provinces too. I mean, just get that word out. Give it out if you aren't in a dental office. Just let it be known. Now they're mixed. They call it balanced. It's not very balanced when it says it's okay. Mercury's okay, but it has both viewpoints. But at least it has our viewpoint. They haven't shut it out. So the fact sheets are moving. Another very clear thing moving is getting dentists on dental boards. We want to get to the point, and I said this when Ron King got on that board, that Sunday we'd have a caucus of mercury-free dentists, and that caucus is growing. Ron is leaving the board, but we're going to try to get somebody on in Ohio. We have one on in Washington. We've had one on in California. We still have a mercury-free advocate, not a dentist, Biggers. Ron, we thank you so much for your 8 years of service in Minnesota. We really do. That's just fantastic. We're working on Ohio now, and Trish O'Hara, how do you pronounce that? O'Hare, with a lot of consonants in the word, but O'Hare is going to try working with Victoria. DaCosta is going to try to find a hygienist we're going to propose in Ohio. We are proposing dentists. We have a pretty good relationship with the governor of Ohio. And we're going to make a big pitch to try to get a mercury-free dentist, Terry Messerman or Bill Westendorf, on that board. We always have to give 2 or 3 names, as we did with Bob Stefan in Washington, and we will do that. So, but we want to keep that moving. Yeah, there is one, yeah. There's a family friend connection to the governor. That's right. Thank you. Andy's clapping. Somebody's clapping for him. Anyway, Margolis. Anyway, so, so we can... So we're going to push that. But I want to get to the point where a mercury-free dentist getting on a board is not even a big deal. We aren't at that point yet because we've got to keep growing that numbers and get people on. But having one mercury-free dentist on the board almost certainly stops the more egregious activity because somebody in the room is blowing the whistle, and that's just what they don't want in those closed doors. So that's a big push, and as I say, we want to push a hygienist as well as a dentist, because we've been invited to put on a hygienist as well. But it's got to be a mercury-free advocate, and if it's just somebody that wants the independent role, our group can't institutionally lobby for her or him to do that. But anyway, it's moving, and it's moving the right way. You all have been quite a good team, this biological dental group, and from the start with the Iranas and just the continuity on through with Bill Glaros running the group, and then Mike Margolis, and soon Nick Meyer. I mean, it's showing it has organic growth, that you're going to be continually advocates. You're certainly a force with us because it's important that we have an advocacy group, and IOAMT does this too, and the Holistic Dental Association. I don't know why there are 3, y'all. There could maybe be just 2, but y'all want to have 3 groups, have 3 groups. Yeah, well, be good. What you could do is you could have an umbrella. You could still have the 3 conferences. You could have the 3 names, but you just have one umbrella group that gets in the media, see, so they have the alternative voice, and that could be the group, but you could still have everything you're doing now and have your own conferences, and then nobody would say, well, I didn't get to study this or that, because you can enrich yourself that way. I mean, Consumers for Dental Choice isn't really a membership-based group. It's a coalition. So all these people that participate, we've never, had dues paying and members and all that because it just hasn't made sense to run it that way. We haven't had time to do it, but there has to be a voice, an advocacy voice, and that's really important in dentistry, I think, to have that alternative voice. So the press says the ADA says X, but of course you have to decide a word. You got holistic biological, but the Biological Dental Association says Y. And if you have a shorter name, that doesn't hurt and all that. But that's all right. That's up to you all. But I'm saying that none of that would take away from the intellectual digging that you do here that's so important and that you need to keep doing. So keep doing that. Don't take away anything from the way you're developing ideas, and you continue to do that. So I want to stress that. Now I want to talk about the gag rule, but to do that I need to go back on a little bit of history, back to 1996 and kind of the status of things. And the status of things then was that the pioneer of this movement had lost his license, Hal Huggins, and the blood was in the water for the ADA. They were then aiming, at Ziff and Arana and all the titans of the organization to say, we'll just take them all out. And that's where things stood in 1996. And that's when Bob Jones called a national meeting in Denver, paid for it out of his pocket, and we had a gathering of people to talk about the need to move forward. Is Bob in this room or the other room, or is Charlie here? Did he? Okay, and Charlie with him, his brother? Okay. So it really, he called that meeting. I don't know if anybody here was at that meeting. I was there. Was anybody at that meeting in Denver? Okay, so it was mainly a Westerners meeting. And we decided to form Consumers for Dental Choice. My law partner then, Jim Turner, came up with the idea. Jim is the leading lawyer in the country on turning alternative health movements into accepted roles in the society, like acupuncture, which amazingly 20 years ago was not even accepted because the AMA, the 100-year-old AMA, said it didn't have enough history, meaning, of course, 5,000, you're right, Dr. Lau, Dr. King. It does go back a little bit in the progenitor cultures of the world. But Jim came up with the name, and we started it, and we started the consumer movement. We have a board. We have several dentists on the board, but it's majority consumer, and we've always been a consumer organization. We knew we had to take out that gag rule, and we haven't taken it out totally by any means, but we've taken it out in a huge way. We got support from people like the Goldwater Center here in Arizona very early. The ACLU, those are both kind of, Goldwater might be considered a right-leaning libertarian, and the ACLU a left-leaning libertarian group, but they came together on this issue. We had several key fights on this thing. They went after Terry Lee's license for year after year after year. They never really laid a glove on him, although they kept trying. Terry won his case. Andy Landerman got his license back. There were these key victories that triggered movements in the state, and the movements led to all kinds of other things. California, the shutting down of the dental board, was the end result of Andy getting his license back. Ironically, Andy wasn't practicing and the board was up here, and a year later, Andy was practicing and the board was out of business. It was a great combination, wasn't it? Yeah. So anyway, and then came Mark Briner, and Mark said, "Where are you, Mark? I know you saw you walk in the room." Anyway, there he is. Mark and Mona there with. Oh no, she isn't. Joan, I'm sorry. That's Joan Stephens. So Joan. I'm sorry, Joan Stephens. Okay, you guys aren't. What are you sitting together anyway? No. Anyway, Mark got the ACLU, enlisted them, went to federal court, and established something for all of you, which is that he has the right to speak in any forum, newspaper, speeches, whatever. It's in a federal court order. It's something that anybody can obtain. I'm sure you can obtain it from Mark if you need it, but you have a right as human beings, and I think you have a duty as human beings to speak. It doesn't make your life easier. I realize it doesn't make your life easier. There's somebody, Rustin or somebody I saw a quote from, who said that the great reward of your work is not what you get, but what it makes you become. And that's been certainly true of me in my life and the opportunity to work in this cause. And I think for you all, you've decided to become something different. And it hasn't made it easy because you've had to be way ahead of the curve. and way ahead of your profession, which is lagging in the 19th century while you're in the 21st. I mean, we're actually 2 centuries apart now, you and your colleagues. But what you're doing is so important, and it just makes it harder. But I think you need to, I mean, it's now you can put in the yellow pages that you're mercury-free. Joan said she does it in Austin, and people can do it and say they're biological, like Bob does on his door, or Stefan, and you can just get that message across that I am mercury-free. I'm entitled to say it. I have a First Amendment right to say what I am, and I'm a mercury-free dentist. And you can put that in ads. You can say it in speeches. I know they start harassing you, but they can't. They haven't taken a single license since Huggins. They haven't been able to take licenses. It just doesn't work anymore because we fight back. As Bill Glaros will tell you, we go right back at them. And at the boards. And the boards saw what happened in California. And California, it isn't a state, it's a nation out there. And when that California Dental Board went down, every dental board in the country knew they'd gone down. And they don't want to go down with them. And they saw the movement going. So the defense turned to offense at that point, where we were allowed to speak. We have a state attorneys general in Oregon and Iowa who have said you can't do a gag rule. We know we're expecting to get that in more places. As I say, we have it in Connecticut with the federal court. So you are entitled to say you're a mercury-free dentist. You're entitled to say why. I mean, these are things that I know you get harassed for it, but it is your First Amendment right, your free speech right in the United States, and I hope comparably in Canada and Korea and other places, to speak up and say that. And if you think you have to also say, but the ADA disagrees with us, as Ron King recommended, that's fine. You can say, I'm in the minority, but here's what I feel. And here's what I feel based on my research. So, just do continue to speak up and speak out. I just think there's no other alternative to that. I'm going to conclude in a moment. I am going to be available for questions if there's time here. If not, I'll just kind of go to a corner and you can come up if you did have any questions you wanted to ask me during the conference. We're moving to the end of mercury in dentistry. I mean, FDA is just, as I think, quite cornered and needs to do something. If the court doesn't sock it to them this year, and we hope they will, the U.S. federal court, if the Congress oversight doesn't sock it to them, we still have the dental panel. They've got pressures from every direction. They know it. Mike Fleming's made clear they know it. He thinks they're going to have to do something this year. The something won't be what we want, that is, a ban, but it'll be something that if it's of any significance, whether it's contraindication, warnings, whatever, it clearly is the beginning of the end. And we've told the ADA they can wait and watch, but if the FDA acts before they act, then their credibility to exit is no longer there. So that puts pressure on the ADA to decide if they want to do some kind of voluntary worked out agreement with us to get things over. We really, as I say, our goal is a ban. I am no fan at all anymore. It seemed exciting at the time, but I'm no fan at all of that tobacco settlement because it meant billions for trial lawyers, and state governments are dependent on new smokers coming in, and yet kids are still smoking.
I know that Bob Jones has filed a lawsuit with representation from Carl Negretti's office against Barrett's and Quackwatch. And we are talking to a number of other dentists to start filing libel and slander suits. I'm considering one myself. And we're going to try to get maybe 100 to 200 practitioners who have been libeled and slandered by these groups to start filing lawsuits against them in different areas. They won't have time to go anywhere but from one plane to the next plane to the next plane to the next plane to try to defend themselves. And we're getting different groups across the country to represent the doctors, and it's just transferring the names on the paperwork. So it's going to be minimal amount to do this. And there are individuals who are attorneys for these people who have made a very, very comfortable living filing lawsuits. But now it's going to go in the other direction. And these attorneys, in my humble opinion, I don't know, do need to make a living, and these individuals aren't going to have the resources unless private institutions, which I am not at liberty to say on tape, donate them money to carry them. But as we have seen yesterday in Mr. Jones's presentation, the ripple effect of what all these different things have done and how certain insurance companies have filed against doctors for fraudulent claims that, turning out, aren't very fraudulent. They're right on the money. And we're going to see after this, after the mercury battle's won, there are a whole bunch of things out there that I'm going to talk to Charlie about and see if we can turn our attention. We have to protect the American public against what has come out, some very, very dangerous drugs that are not used for the purpose of what they were designed for and are preying on the public for fear of things that we thought were kind of naturally occurring, like osteoporosis. So there, unfortunately, is a very, very dark cloud. We, as a integrative group, need to move forward and educate our patients, educate the public to try to protect them, and educate our colleagues, physicians, not to be going out and blindly doing what pharmaceutical companies say is going to be wonderful. They're making billions of dollars at the expense of who? Did I answer your question? Okay, I think this is actually first, before we start answering questions, this is the question and answer period we're going to do. And I want to first recognize Charlie for the hard work. Yeah, you can stand up for Charlie. Because, face it, no amount of money. When I met this man, I sat there and said, you got to be kidding me. Do you realize who you're going against? The one private organization has a $300 million war chest for legal funds. Charlie, what were you operating on? $1.50 a month?
$300.
Yeah, so, you know, there's the David and Goliath. Okay, the question was, do you use software? Yes, I do have a office that is based on a software which I won't name the company because there are a number of companies. Strawberry has an excellent program for bringing down information, and I have talked to Virginia about if it could be hooked up into my software, and she says she's working on that because I don't want to do a double entry of everything, because we do have a software that goes through everything. And if you were to just step through and use the software for the oral exam, the x-rays, and the soft tissue exam, the TMJ exam, whenever I had a complaint and I had an attorney who I won't mention because I'm not using that individual anymore, because they were afraid to question the board on anything that was brought against me for evidence. And I found out, and this is something that you as members must know, that if you're accused of doing something below the standard of care, since the board doesn't tell you what the standard of care is because they don't want to be nailed down to a standard of care, you who are being accused of being below the standard of care have the right to say to the board, I want that person here to tell me what I did wrong and show me what they did wrong. Because when I was told that, no, there's no osteonecrosis by this periodontist, he gave his diagnosis off 4 bite wings. Now, bite wings don't show osteonecrosis, they show the coronal aspect of teeth. And when I questioned them, the board said, no, you can't do it. Well, going through the administrative court, the appellate court, and now up to the Supreme Court, I found out that my biggest problem was my documentation, as you said, with the software was so excellent, they didn't want to address that. What they didn't want was they said, well, the cavitat, that's a nice machine, but we don't recognize that. So they just went to the x-ray. And we have a periodontist that said you were wrong. But now that I'm in court, I can't bring any of that up because there was no objections to the evidence presented. So basically, if I lose my case, it's not because we weren't right. Because legally, we weren't in the right spot because they didn't accept all the documentation. So you, as a person being accused, if you have all this beautiful documentation laid out, then what you need to do is make sure that it is presented and accepted and recognized in the notes of the board. because the board said, oh yeah, we looked at that, but we didn't consider it. Now the judges are saying, hey, that's outside our jurisdiction. All we can talk about is the legal aspects of what's there. We don't know dentistry. The board is the expert. So see, you're caught in the middle. So first, you have to make sure your documentation is phenomenal. I mean, Joanne is here, my hygienist. I thought I saw Kristen somewhere earlier, the other hygienist. They go over and they really look at the charts before somebody comes in. They make sure that all the x-rays are up. That's just one person in the line. Then we have the receptionist who does that on the way out. We have one lady that pulls the records, so I've got 3 people, and then I have an office manager that checks all the charts before they're filed away, and then myself. So we have 4 or 5 people looking at their record before it's put on the shelf to make sure that it's correct. And if you have a paperless office that some of them have today, it's real simple and easy because some of them have checkoffs. Before you close the screen, you have to make sure that you do every step before it closes. So it's for people like me who are so ADD that we get so excited and we go through and we forget to do things. It makes it so 1, 2, 3 has to be done. But yes, I highly recommend using a computer because at the end of the day, when we do insurance, push a button, it's gone. And now with the new digital radiographs, the most unbelievable thing, I went to a company's program 2 weeks ago, did a pano, it showed the blockage in the carotid arteries. Can you imagine what you can do to tell somebody that? I'm looking to put something called new cone beam technology. Not everybody's going to do it because it's a $200,000 machine, but I'm putting an imaging center into a new office that I'm building, and it will do a 360-degree image of the head, and we'll do slices along with my cavitat, and that I could show every cavitation in a jawbone that is as small as a 0.5 millimeter. That's how accurate this thing is. So documentation is everything, and yet you have to realize what your rights are. If you're accused of doing something wrong, you write the board and tell them that you expect that person to be at the initial interview, so you may question them how they came to their conclusions and why you were wrong. So be active. John, you had one more question on that? Is there anybody else? You can use, you can use. I'm sorry? Speak up, I can't hear.
Is there anyone else in the audience that has looked into the software issue?
You'd have to ask people, anybody else in? Yeah, the question is anybody else? I mean, you can use Eagle, you can use SoftDent, you can use Toothpick. Am I missing any other major ones? Dentrex is a very big one. Well, see, what will happen is you'll say don't use Dentrex. Well, we use a company by the name of SoftDent. SoftDent was purchased by Kodak, and Kodak has gone in within the last 2 years and put millions of dollars to update it and make it so it's user-friendly. So anybody that you talk to who's using a product will tell you to use somebody else's because they know all the headaches they have with it. But, I don't want to sit there and endorse one to another. And Strawberry is a phenomenal program that brings in so much of the diagnostic aspects. The thing that I want to know is it going to be, in the near future, integrated into a software that I already have? Because I don't want to have to, if I have to double entry something, I'm going to have some employees that are going to kill me.
If the ADA is going to get out of this mercury issue on the environmental side, what does that mean in terms of drilling out old amalgam fillings? And are they going to be able to, what are they going to do about that? I mean, we're set up to take care of that, but they're not.
No, that's a tremendous question about the removal. And of course, it's a big if the ADA wants to get out. My board actually has specifically asked that we address that in each point. And I've written the ADA that there needs to be a protocol on removal, because the removal is going to accelerate as the public awareness spreads. Even today, with all the work we've done, in a Zogby poll, the question asked, by the way, and Jim Harrison's one of our supporters too, I think I left out Jim. A Zogby poll, we asked what's the major component of amalgam, and only 24% of the people could name mercury. So even then, and yet, when told it was mercury and asked, would you prefer fillings with mercury that cost less or fillings without mercury that cost more, 78% said we prefer fillings that cost more that don't have mercury. So clearly they would choose something else. So the publicity, the awareness is going to dramatically change consumer choice going in, but also getting rid of them. And Andy Brockman's got a great point. There being a lot of sick people in removal. We've got to address it, but it can't slow down the movement to stop them from going in. That's always been like, well, we can't scare people, and that's part of the position of the government, so we should keep plowing them into to children and racial minorities and poor people and Appalachian people where I come from and all this stuff, and saying, but we'll just keep putting it in so we don't have to justify public scares on taking them out. I hope the ADA would go with a protocol. I've recommended that, but hey, there's just so much on the table. They may take nothing, and frankly, it might be exciting trying to win this without them, but frankly, I guess I'd rather find a shortcut. There's an expression that many wars have been won when one general surrendered right before the other one was about to give up. And so, I mean, we do have you guys supporting us, but we are a thin group in terms of resources, and we have to evaluate that too.
Since I have the microphone here, 2 questions. One, first, has anybody done a real nice money trail from the quackbusters backwards? Who really funds these guys? And number 2, is there going to be product liability absolution to the ADA if this happens? What's going to happen? You know, if Vioxx was big, mercury amalgam toxicity and the potential, now we can measure a lot of stuff about it. The product liability aspect could be huge. Are you going to have to absolve the ADA? Because I understand they own some of the patents for amalgam. So what's going to happen with product liability?
Well, let me answer Dr. Gerber's second question only, and somebody else can answer the first. But yeah, it's not going to be a universal. I mean, I'm not proposing a universal settlement. I don't have any authority to stop people from suing the ADA. Anybody in the world can sue them, and they know that. There's no piece of paper I could offer to them to stop that. So the ADA could still be sued, but they're certainly a lot smarter to get out now and do it for environmental reasons and roll the dice on product liability. Nonetheless, they do have patents. The patents have expired. They do have the pay-to-play seal of acceptance service that they're getting out of at the end of this year. I mean, they're trying to retreat. There's no question about it. Can they retreat fast enough? That's their problem. But no, I would not sign anything that would stop people from asserting their rights as a dentist, as a consumer, or anyone else, because I don't have that authority to do it in the first place.
To answer your first question, if I were to give you the scenario that Bob Jones has followed the paper trail that unfortunately I will not do on camera. I'll be very honest with you, and I'll tell you, Michael, where that leads. But it leads all the way into Washington, D.C. It leads to a number of insurance companies. They're sponsoring them. They're giving them money, and unfortunately, it's very, very political. So I will answer that off camera, but Bob Jones has got it listed down to a money trail that they've been able to follow, where our tax dollars are actually being used against us. That's why I don't belong to traditional dental organizations anymore. I know a number of our members belong to the American Dollar Association because they want to try to change it from within. I've chosen not to give them their money so they can turn around and fight me.
Can I add to that? Because that's a great point. There's a dentist in Florida who's quitting the ADA. She's had 2 horrible miscarriages. She's traced it almost certainly to the mercury that she's exposed to in the office. Even though she's mercury-free, she's in a public health clinic where there's other mercury. She wanted to resign from the ADA. I wrote her a letter that's just totally like, you guys are so anti-women, it's unbelievable, because you don't even want to protect us women dentists. And she's decided, I think, not to sign the letter. Now, what I want to offer to the women dentists here who are maybe members of ADA, if any of you want to take this opportunity to quit the ADA, I will write you a letter I will draft a letter that you can decide whether you want to send. We'd like to post it on our website because I'm telling you, besides the many other problems with the ADA is their sensitivity to women exposed to mercury, and Andy Brockman's worked on this for 20-some years, I think, that issue, is outrageous. So I just wanted to point that out. I mean, because I really thought we had a real chance there, and she just, I think, has decided she doesn't want to quite go that visible. But some of you all might, and it'd be fabulous if you would.
Andy, come on up. I know that you can talk on this topic. Andy was speaking for us at the Institute of Natural Dentistry and definitely has some opinions on this.
I testified in front of the FDA about this for the women because most of the people were coming to testify for the harm that has been done to them, and I actually wanted to testify for the dentists of our exposure and that there has been no labeling warning female dentists and hygienists and assistants about the dangers of the mercury exposure from placing it or removing it, and I thought that that needed to be labeled on the amalgam if they were still going to be using it, because we needed to protect ourselves. I was one of the people that did have a miscarriage also and reproductive issues. So I thought it was very interesting that when I placed my testimony on the docket, that part of my testimony was cut out. It did not make it. I had put in there that I had called the American Dental Association when I was pregnant, and I was concerned about drilling out mercury amalgam fillings and what it was doing to me and to my fetus. And in my testimony, I had said that I had made several calls to the ADA, and the answer was, I'll get back to you. And that was 26 years ago. I still have not heard from them. So, right? Right, so that didn't make it into the docket.
As soon as FDA classifies amalgam, they'll then get back to you on that.
I suppose.
Well, since we're talking about this whole ADA issue, you have to remember that if you get into a board action that you end up losing, then you may end up in a civil court, because the people might take the evidence from the board decision, turn around and use it in civil court to sue you. When you get into civil court, then you're going to be before a judge, and you're going to enter into laws like that, where if you are a member of the ADA and you don't have prominent presence as being some type of a holistic dentist or something, you can get into trouble.
So Bob always labels himself as a holistic dentist, so no one's surprised. Isn't that what you're saying? A biologic. You call yourself right on the door. People want to know what you are, and that's a good point. I mean, just tell people what you are, and can't argue with the truth.
I don't know who is or may not be using proper protocols in their office for safe mercury removal. I hope everybody is, because it obviously would be, if you are not protecting your employees, you are really violating OSHA regulations. And I was wondering, has anyone approached the OSHA issue of getting them involved into this whole activity of what are you doing to your staff?
Yeah, a lot of terrible things. And OSHA and the ADA worked out a deal that OSHA basically said we would do nothing. Our theory has been to try to work, just like on the other issues, at the state level first, to go to a state OSHA. That takes me back to a story, and this is why the stakes that we're fighting here. We had a dental assistant who was ready to file a complaint with California. Then she moved to Florida, and we couldn't get that issue before it. She was a plaintiff in our lawsuit. She kind of disappeared. She's a very small woman, very mercury toxic, told us that, had been diagnosed, really had problems. We had to track her down because of this lawsuit. There'd been a development this was about less than 2 months ago. I couldn't find her. I finally reached her father. It's a very unusual name. Debbie Seltenreich is her name. And I called her father, and she said, well, Debbie died such and such date, 2005. She took her own life. We know the stakes are that big, and these are real people, dental offices, men and women that are dentists, dental hygienists, dental assistants, real people with real problems. I know there's been real fights. The progress that we've made over and over has been real people like Terry Lee and Andy Landerman and Mark Briner, bringing real cases and real battles. And I just want to make sure that, we realize the human aspect that's involved. And that's why your decisions, Nick Meyer and others, to be mercury-free and lead this organization are so important for human lives. Absolutely that the dental assistants are at risk, but it's the same timidity of the workplace investigators as environmental investigators. Environmental's gone so much farther, mainly to the work because of the work of one person. And that one person is Michael Bender, the Mercury Policy Project in Vermont. And some of you met Michael at hearings, and he's just unbelievable. And he's written these 2 reports, and when he writes a report, he's kind of like the way we operate. We get all these groups to sign on to things. He does that. He gets Sierra Club and National Wildlife Federation and Clean Water Action. Actually, Michael's writing the thing, but they agree. They're part of the process. They agree. They read it. They peer review it the same way you do, but they do environmental peer review, and they sign on because he's so right. And his 2 reports in 2002 and 2005 have emboldened the environmental regulators. So to get the workplace regulators emboldened to enforce the law is not going to be from a snap of a finger. It's going to be the same kind of coalition building and action move that I'd like to see, and I just wish we could take it to that level, Benny, but we haven't done that yet.
I felt I just had to make a counterpoint to Bob Stefan's comment about being a member of the ADA and in civil court you're liable. Well, that may be true, but I guess I'll just throw it out that when I was I was up for appointment to the state board, every dental association, hygiene assistants, community dentistry, educators, they all endorsed me, but my own dental association did not. And I know from a personal experience, I heard via the grapevine that the executive director of the Minnesota Dental Association, which is just one of the 3 triads from the ADA, he badmouthed me at a district dental society meeting, and that was early on when I was just appointed. At our last board meeting, he came up to me and said, "Ron, I hope that when you're off the board, you'll consider being on a committee or working with the Minnesota Dental Association." Now, what that means to me is the other counterpoint to that is, if you're not a member of the ADA, you can't really work from within because you're not within. And I think that's a component you have to consider outside the legal perspective is, if you want to help change things, it's maybe better to be within, be accepted. They find out who you are, and in meetings and talking around the water cooler, you can just bring up these things in a non-controversial, non-confrontational way. So that's just my perspective from being within or without.
I'm a dentist in West Los Angeles. Following up with a lot of all this different work and different progress we've been making. And one question I asked yesterday was, where do you think we will be in 10 years? And what can we maybe as a group do with Quackwatch? They're listing our names out there for people that get on the internet, they want to look us up, they want to see what we've done, and they're coming up in reports about how we are involved in I've been claims that I'm one of the owners of the cavitat industry, that I get a percentage of that in my pocket, and all these allegations, true defamation of character. Some of us work so hard to be here and to be able to, you guys have led the way, we're the next generation, and when I look behind me, I don't see anybody. I don't see the other generation behind me, following you guys, and that is concerning. That is really concerning.
Well, I know that Dr. King has addressed that by bringing his associate this weekend, and I have to compliment him for bringing younger dentists. And it's by grabbing a dentist in your community and bringing them along who is 10 to 15 years younger than us. But this is a true problem. Take a look at when you go to dental school. I have a son that's graduating this year. He's going on for a GPR. And he doesn't want to go into general dentistry because he's seen the fight for mercury. So I think he might go and specialize so he's away from it. And I complimented him on that decision, even though it would have been nice for him to come by the practice. But, you know, it is to our benefit to bring in some of these new doctors, but they have a tremendous financial burden when they're getting out of school, and they're just trying to get their feet going. And the last thing they want to do is piss off the dentist down the street who get a file complaint against them because they're scared to death of a board. As Ron pointed out, the very first lecture of the of our conference, these people, this board has your future in their hands. So a lot of young doctors are not using mercury. They won't use mercury because their brains didn't go dead out of the chemistry classes. But they're just trying to make ends meet. And this is a question that this board is trying to address for new doctors getting into business, and how can we make it affordable for them to come to the conference and get involved?
I teach at a naturopathic school, the dental component, and things happen with nature. A lot of young naturopaths and young physicians, whether they like it or not, the system cannot sustain suppressive therapy, which is orthodox treatment. So as the system pushes towards one way, it has to go the other way, flexion, extension. So nature will take care of your concerns. You don't have to worry, because the huge explosion, the naturopaths are going to take care of your concerns. They know about cavitations. Guys like me, I produce 60 students a year. I make sure they take Dietrich's courses, and I make sure they do all the other alternative things, and it's spreading like crazy.
Most of the dentists that have lost their license is because of what Dietrich taught them.
Yeah.
And no one was there to warn us about state licensing, be careful what you do.
But we have to lose licenses and lives before we change.
No, you don't have to.
Dentists
But
aren't
that's
losing
law of
licenses.
nature.
Dentists aren't losing licenses,
Well,
okay? They're not losing licenses.
Doug Phillips, unfortunately, had his license, and it was on the information that he utilized that he learned in an individual's course.
Also, Shed just lost it because of this.
He surrendered his license.
He surrendered his license, but this,
I don't know.
okay.
I don't know which way.
We'll talk, they didn't lose their license over mercury, is what we're saying. And this is a different issue that we'll talk about afterwards. We got one more question to go, and then if you want to come discuss this up here, I think it's definitely an important issue.
The comment on, in terms of whether or not to join the ADA, I think I have to be embarrassed because I started a project when I got back into practice, and Mike and I met for one weekend, and Felix and I are just about to wrap it up, but basically a scope of practice, standard of care for this organization. And the ADA, if you're members of the ADA, then you have to subscribe to their scope of practice or their standard of care. And so, as far as I'm concerned, that's the biggest reason to not be a member of the ADA.
I like those questions. Bobby, you want to wrap this up with a question? Okay, this is the last one.
Well, I think another issue that may be a project after the mercury issue is over is the control of the education system by the ADA through the certification process. They have so much control over what the professors can teach, because if they don't teach what the ADA says, then the ADA will withdraw certification of the school. So that's a major issue, and that occurred in Germany with functional medicine and bioenergetics, and they were able to deal with that in Germany. I don't know how they did it, but we can probably find out. And they now do teach aspects of energetic medicine, functional medicine, and bioenergetics in the German medical schools. So we do have a generation of those type of doctors that are, out there in the planet now, practicing and doing those procedures, and nuclear evolution will, in the long run, make it right.
The comment, I have a son that's just finishing up dental school in Oregon, and every student there is a member of the American Student Dental Association, if they like it or not. It's part of their tuition. It is a definite racketeering mode that the ADA does, because even though they're a trade agency, a trade union, they act like they're a government agency. This is the problem with the AMA also. And that's something that the government looks at and says, we have no idea how to run these things. We're not doctors. We have to go to the doctor associations and have them set the standards. I believe that in this century, the consumers are going to be the ones that are going to drive this and drive us. That's what drove me into this organization, and that's what's driving dentistry today. I think that in the long run, it's going to be the consumers that are going to make the difference. And that's why consumer choice is so important. That's why toxic teeth is so important, because that is the future of dentistry. And I think if you take a look at the surveys, 60 to 70% of the American population is going to alternative medicine because our system has failed. The establishment has failed. And we hopefully will be an organization that will grow, encompass not only dentists, physicians like Michael Gerber, and some of the other physicians I see and health practitioners in this hall, to help us bring this to the consumer and to the awareness that these alternatives are available and that they do work. Charlie, thank you very much for your participation. And thank everybody. Toby and Dawn, thank you for the phenomenal job that you did this weekend.